Sand Cave, January 30th, 1925, Cave City, Kentucky. Floyd Collins, a 37-year-old experienced cave explorer, squeezed through a narrow passage in Sand Cave, searching for a new tourist attraction that could compete with nearby Mammoth Cave. Collins had discovered several caves in the area and understood the commercial value of finding spectacular chambers. He was working alone, crawling through a tight, unexplored tunnel approximately 55 feet below the surface. At around 10 a.m., disaster struck. As Collins wriggled through a 9-inch-high crevice, his foot dislodged a 27-pound rock from the ceiling. The rock fell and pinned his left ankle, trapping him in a space so narrow he couldn't turn around or reach down to free himself. Collins remained conscious and alert, trapped in total darkness in a passage barely wide enough for his body. His younger brother Homer found him the next day after Floyd failed to return home. Homer crawled down to the narrow crevice and found Floyd wedged in place, shivering from the cave's 54-degree temperature. Floyd was coherent and begged for help. Homer tried to pull him free but couldn't generate enough leverage in the confined space. The rock had him pinned solidly. Homer crawled back out and organized a rescue attempt. What followed became the first major media circus in American history. Word spread quickly that a man was trapped alive in a cave. By February 2nd, reporters from newspapers across the country arrived in Cave City. A Louisville Courier-Journal reporter named William Burke Skeets Miller, who was small enough to fit through the passage, crawled down to interview Collins multiple times. Miller's dispatches, describing Collins's desperate situation in vivid detail, were printed in newspapers nationwide. Millions of Americans followed the story daily. Miller won a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage. Rescue efforts were chaotic and ultimately futile. Volunteers tried to dig Floyd out, but the passage was too unstable. Every attempt to widen the tunnel risked collapsing the ceiling onto Collins. Engineers proposed digging a vertical shaft down to Collins from above, but it would take days. Meanwhile, Collins lay trapped in the freezing passage, unable to eat or drink properly. Volunteers passed him food and water, but he could barely consume anything in his contorted position. By February 4th, a cave-in sealed off the narrow passage completely, cutting off all access to Collins. Rescuers could no longer reach him to provide food, water, or comfort. The shaft digging operation continued. Hundreds of workers took shifts, excavating tons of rock and soil. A carnival atmosphere developed above ground. An estimated 10,000 spectators gathered at the cave entrance, some selling food and souvenirs. National Guard troops were called in to control the crowds. Radio stations broadcast updates. The nation was transfixed. On February 16th, 17 days after Collins became trapped, workers finally broke through to the chamber where he lay. They found his body, cold and lifeless. Medical examiners later determined Collins had died around February 10th, roughly 3 days after the passage collapsed and cut off his air supply. He had survived trapped in that narrow space for approximately 10 days before dying of exposure, dehydration, and hypothermia. Collins's body was initially left in the cave because removing it through the narrow passage proved impossible. His family later had the cave entrance blasted open and recovered his body in April 1925. Floyd Collins was buried, then later exhumed and displayed in a glass-topped coffin inside Crystal Cave, another cave he had discovered as a tourist attraction. His body remained on display for decades, stolen once and recovered, until his family finally had him buried permanently in 1989. The Floyd Collins tragedy changed cave rescue protocols across America and demonstrated the power of mass media to capture national attention.
Mossdale Caverns, June 24, 1967, Yorkshire Dales, England. 6 experienced cavers entered Mossdale Caverns, one of Britain's most extensive cave systems, for what they expected to be a routine exploration. The group included members of the University of Leeds Speleological Association, all skilled and familiar with the dangers of caving. The plan was to explore deeper sections of the cave and practice surveying techniques. Weather conditions at the entrance appeared normal. The forecast mentioned possible rain, but nothing suggested serious danger. They entered the cave around 10 a.m. The 6 cavers were David Adamson, John Ogley, Colin Vickers, James Cunningham, Michael Cunningham, and Brian Walmsley. They moved through the familiar entrance passages and pushed deeper into the system, navigating tight crawls and low chambers. Mossdale Caverns has a complex drainage system fed by Mossdale Beck, a stream on the surface that flows into the cave during rainfall. The cavers knew the cave could flood, but major floods were considered rare. They had checked conditions before entering and deemed it safe. What they didn't know was that a severe thunderstorm had begun developing over the fells several miles upstream. Heavy rain started falling around midday, rapidly increasing the flow of water into Mossdale Beck. The rainfall was intense and concentrated, creating a flash flood situation. Water began pouring into the cave system far faster than normal. Within minutes, the underground stream passages transformed into raging torrents. Inside the cave, the 6 men had no warning. The first indication of danger was likely the sound of rushing water echoing through the passages, growing louder. By the time they realized what was happening, the water level was already rising. They attempted to retreat toward the entrance, but the route back led through low passages that had become submerged siphons, completely filled with water with no airspace. There was no way through. They were trapped approximately 400 feet underground with floodwater rising around them. Outside, other cavers who had planned to enter later noticed the swollen beck and realized something was catastrophically wrong. They raised the alarm immediately. Cave rescue teams assembled within hours, but the flood was so severe that entering the cave was impossible. Water was pouring out of the entrance in massive volume. Rescuers could only wait for the water level to drop. The flood continued for hours. By evening, the water level began to recede enough for rescue teams to attempt entry. They pushed into the cave, fighting against still dangerous currents and poor visibility. What they found was devastating. The 6 cavers had tried to escape the rising water by climbing to higher passages, but Mossdale's complex layout had worked against them. Some were found in chambers where they had sought refuge, drowned when the water filled even the highest accessible spaces. Others were discovered in narrow passages, apparently attempting to reach safety when the flood overtook them. It took days to recover all 6 bodies. The operation was dangerous and emotionally devastating. The victims were young men, all in their 20s, experienced cavers who had simply been in the wrong place when nature struck without warning. The tragedy became the worst caving disaster in British history at that time. An investigation followed. Experts determined that the combination of the specific storm pattern, the cave's drainage characteristics, and the speed of the flood created conditions that gave the cavers virtually no chance of escape once the water began rising. The entrance passages that had been dry when they entered had become death traps within an hour. Mossdale Caverns remains open to experienced cavers, but strict protocols now govern entry during any period when rain is forecast. The 1967 tragedy stands as a stark reminder that even experienced cavers can be killed by conditions that develop too quickly to escape.
Alpazat Cave, March 9, 2024, Tlaxcala, Mexico. 4 young people, Fernanda Yareli, her boyfriend Jair Hernandez, and their friends Sergio Hernandez and Carla Sofia drove to Alpazat Cave for a day trip. The cave is located near the town of Coapiaxtla, about 75 miles east of Mexico City. It's a popular local attraction, known for its accessible entrance and relatively short passages. Families visit regularly. There are no official restrictions on entry, no warning signs about gas dangers, and no permit requirements. The 4 friends, ranging in age from 22 to 27, had decided to explore the cave together. None were experienced cavers, but the cave's reputation as safe and tourist-friendly suggested no special training was needed. They entered the cave around 1 p.m. The entrance is a wide opening that descends gradually into the earth. Natural light penetrates the first section, making it easy to navigate without headlamps. The group moved deeper, talking and taking photos. The cave is relatively dry compared to others in the region, with stable temperatures year-round. Nothing appeared dangerous. The air smelled normal. There were no visible hazards. What they couldn't see or smell was hydrogen sulfide. Alpazat Cave sits in a volcanic region where underground gas pockets can accumulate in poorly ventilated chambers. Hydrogen sulfide is colorless and at high concentrations quickly deadens the sense of smell, making it undetectable. At low levels, it smells like rotten eggs. At the concentrations present in Alpazat that day, it provided no warning at all before causing immediate collapse. The four friends descended approximately 50 meters into the cave. In a lower chamber with poor air circulation, hydrogen sulfide had accumulated to lethal levels. The first person to collapse likely had no warning, just sudden dizziness, then unconsciousness within seconds. When one person fell, the others would have rushed to help, exposing themselves to the same toxic atmosphere. High concentrations of hydrogen sulfide cause what's called knockdown, instant loss of consciousness followed by respiratory paralysis and cardiac arrest within minutes. All four collapsed in rapid succession. Outside the cave, relatives became concerned when the group didn't return by evening. Family members went to the cave entrance and called down into the darkness. When they received no response, they contacted authorities. Emergency services arrived around 8 p.m. Rescue workers entered the cave but quickly detected dangerous gas levels using monitoring equipment. They retreated immediately and called for specialized teams. A full rescue operation was mobilized. Teams equipped with breathing apparatus and gas detectors entered the cave early the next morning on March 10th. They found all four bodies in the lower chamber, approximately 50 meters from the entrance. All were deceased. The gas concentration in that section was measured at deadly levels, far exceeding safe exposure limits. The victims had likely died within minutes of entering the contaminated zone. The recovery operation took hours. Teams had to ventilate the chamber before they could safely remove the bodies. Each victim was carefully extracted and brought to the surface. Autopsies later confirmed hydrogen sulfide poisoning as the cause of death. Toxicology reports showed lethal levels of the gas in their blood and tissues. Local authorities closed Alpazat Cave immediately following the tragedy. Warning signs were installed. Investigations revealed that the cave had no monitoring system for gas buildup, no ventilation assessment, and no safety protocols, despite being open to the public. The four friends had walked into an invisible death trap that looked completely safe. Alpazat Cave remains closed. The March 2024 tragedy demonstrated that caves can kill through invisible threats that provide no warning. No rising water, no collapsing rock, just toxic air that stops the heart before the brain registers danger.
3 caves, 3 different decades, 3 different ways to die underground. Floyd Collins, trapped by a falling rock in 1925, survived for days while the nation watched helplessly. He died slowly from exposure and dehydration while thousands stood above ground. 6 experienced British cavers drowned in Mossdale Caverns in 1967 when a flash flood filled their escape routes faster than they could retreat. 4 young friends collapsed instantly in Alpazat Cave in 2024, killed by invisible gas they couldn't see, smell, or escape. Caves kill in ways that surface dangers don't. A rock that's been stable for centuries can fall in an instant. Weather miles away can send water through passages in minutes. Gas can accumulate silently in chambers that look perfectly safe. There's no warning, no second chance, and often no escape. These tragedies span a century, but the lesson remains the same. Caves are inherently hostile environments where small mistakes or bad luck have fatal consequences. The darkness below offers beauty and adventure, but it demands absolute respect. If you found this video informative, subscribe for more content. Share your thoughts or suggest the next topic in the comments below.